What's going on, guys, and welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where every single week I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network. As I noted yesterday, a ton of content to come in the next couple of days. Yesterday we had the debut of WWE Untold, the second coming of ECW, which was great. Check out my full review of that episode here on the channel on Network and Chill. Today we're talking WWE Chronicle, the latest installment on Roman Reigns, which took place from February 22nd. I think was the day that it was announced that he was cleared, or the day after it was announced he was coming back to Raw, and then culminates with his Raw return on February 25th. So, great episode here to come in the next few days. More content on the WWE Network to review. So on Sunday, we're talking WWE Untold, Eddie Guerrero, SmackDown Legend, and then on Monday, another episode of WWE Untold. It's called Mankind's Hell in a Cell Shocker, or something along those lines. And both very good episodes. I watched them and then I realized, excuse me, I've seen them before. They've actually debuted on WWE's YouTube channel a number of months ago. I think the Mankind one before Hell in the Cell in September, and then in honor of the 20-year anniversary of the match. And then the Eddie Guerrero one actually debuted on their YouTube channel back in October before SmackDown 1000. So I had seen both before, I've enjoyed both before, but I watched them back to take notes on them to review for Network and Chill now that they're officially on the network. And then on Sunday after Fastlane, they're premiering a new season of WWE Photo Shoot. I think the return episode features AJ Styles. So I'm hoping to watch that Monday. I think I'm working Sunday, so hoping to watch it Monday, review that for Tuesday. So again, quick recap. Yesterday, Untold with the second coming of ECW. If you haven't already checked it out, please do so. Today we're talking WWE Chronicle and Roman Reigns. Tomorrow, WWE Untold, the Eddie Guerrero SmackDown Legend episode. Monday, WWE Untold, Mankind's Hell in a Cell Shocker episode. And then, hopefully Tuesday, WWE Photo Shoot on AJ Styles. So 5 straight episodes of Network and Chill for you guys, fans of the channel. So let's get started here with WWE Chronicle, what you guys came here to hear, the latest installment of Chronicle. And this is a great show. They've done a number of them by this point on a variety of superstars. It seemed like they were doing it every month, like before all the Big Four pay-per-views. They had done one before Shinsuke Nakamura back at WrestleMania 34, before Mania last year. Before SummerSlam, they did one on Samoa Joe. Before Survivor Series, they did one on Dean Ambrose. And then it became a monthly thing from there on out, because before TLC, they did one on Becky Lynch. And then before the Rumble, or around Rumble time, they did one on Paige. So check all those out. They're all great. I only have reviews up so far of the Ambrose, Becky, and Paige ones. I've seen the Nakamura and Joe ones. I have yet to review them, so I'll probably go back and watch them and review them for the channel at some point down the road. But the Roman Reigns one, we kick off the special with him asking himself if he really wanted to share the news of him having leukemia back in October. He didn't want to seem defeated. He didn't want to come across as vulnerable. It's not the word that he used, but that's kind of the vibe I got from what he was saying here. And he kind of talks about how Roman Reigns, the character, how as a character before the whole diagnosis of, leukemia came about, that the Roman Reigns character wants to instill hope in fans, instill hope in those kids that want to give up or don't want to move forward, etc., etc. And now being diagnosed with leukemia for a second time, because he had had it before, I think over 10 years ago, before he came to WWE. I think that was what ended his football career, which I'll talk about soon enough. He feels like his character, him as a person, he has a new purpose in coming back to WWE to tell people, hey, I beat it, so can you, which that was really cool. So again, this takes place from February 22nd to February 25th. And a bit of a timeline here to some, background, some context. The 22nd was the Friday. They announced on the Thursday that he was returning to Raw. We all kind of assumed he'd be announcing that he was cancer-free, or at least in remission, whatever, and that, he'd be back in action ASAP. The 25th is when he actually came back. So this took place from the Friday to the Monday. He talks about when he first got diagnosed, or he first found out when the leukemia had returned. It was at a live event. He said it was either on a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday. And he said he arrived at the live event. He got a blood test. And because the doctors thought there was something off with him. So he was told he had to see the medical staff before Raw that Monday. And to provide some background here, not that this is really all that relevant, but I remember that weekend because actually Alexis and I went to a WWE house show that Saturday in Hartford, Connecticut. I think he was advertised for the show. I wasn't expecting a full Shield, reunion match, whatever, because the Shield was a thing back then, before, Reigns got sick, of course. I think Ambrose and Rollins worked the other house show circuit. But this one was supposed to feature Roman Reigns, if I wasn't mistaken. And he didn't show up, which I thought was weird. They made no mention of it during the show. So maybe that was where he got the blood test. It was either at that show that day or the Friday. So either of one of those events, he was not cleared to compete. And he was sent home and then went to Raw to kind of get an update on his status. He was told by the doctors that his white blood cell count was elevated, which meant that the leukemia had returned, which is, he knew exactly what it was. He didn't really have a feeling of what it was going to be until the medical staff told him that. He was like, yeah, I can get over it. I'll be fine, blah, blah, blah. But after hearing that, the first thing that popped into his head was that he had to drop the championship, which he talked about how much it sucked for him because he just won that championship back at SummerSlam 2 months earlier. He worked really hard to get it back. It was a long chase. He'd been chasing the Universal Championship for like 2.5 years. He, failed to win the championship in late 2016, early 2017. Even at WrestleMania last year, he failed to beat Brock Lesnar for the belt. Finally won it at SummerSlam, and then he finds out the leukemia is back and he has to vacate the championship. And he talks about having a very distinct feeling walking down the ramp. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced up to that point. And he felt scared because he didn't know what the future held for him. Not only was he dealing with his own diagnosis of the leukemia, but also what people, would think about him. And he felt insecure and about maybe not like just losing his hair and stuff like that, but it's an appearance-based business. And he didn't want to be kind of pigeonholed as the guy who has leukemia, so he felt insecure. He felt there would be judgment towards him. But he also said that he felt free after getting it off his chest on Raw that night, that it was a giant weight lifted off his shoulders now that everyone knew his situation. He didn't have to hide anything anymore. But also, too, when he was doing the Make-A-Wish stuff, even before the leukemia had returned, which I never knew this, which is pretty amazing. I mean, obviously, I never knew this. I don't think anyone knew this, but except for these kids. So he would do the Make-A-Wish stuff, and he would tell these kids who have cancer, like, hey, I used to have leukemia. You can get through it. I did, so you can too, which he was telling people before the leukemia had returned, because obviously he had it 10 years earlier. So he was telling these kids, a part of the Make-A-Wish Foundation, who had cancer, these stories. And obviously they weren't going to go fucking writing on the dirt sheets, oh, Roman Reigns, oh, leukemia. Like, they're not going to say anything. And that meant a lot to the families. To hear that from a superstar they had kind of looked up to and put on a pedestal as this guy that they watch on TV every single week. They feel he's invincible, but he'll tell these kids these stories about how he had leukemia back in the day before it returned just recently, and they'd be like, wow, like, you went through the same thing that I did and you beat it, like, maybe I can too, like that type of thing, which I think is amazing. So he returns to the Performance Center soon after to start getting back in ring shape. He gets checked out by a doctor. He hopes to get cleared. And he talks about how he could have sat around and moped for all those months that he wasn't cleared, that he couldn't wrestle. But he didn't. He felt immobilized for a few months. He kind of just sat there and did nothing. I don't really know how the cancer treatment works with, the chemotherapy and everything else. But him specifically, in his case, he just kind of felt immobilized. And thankfully, he didn't have many side effects, aside from just taking a pill, which kind of helped him out a lot, and feeling arthritis from his foot to his hips. But beyond that, he was largely good. So after the immobilization phase kind of, that ended, he began working out more, and at the Performance Center, he gets the news that he's cleared to compete again. So that's when he's starting to take bumps again on that Friday or Saturday, I think. So starts taking the bumps, and he's like, oh man, I was expecting my body to start killing me because it hasn't been taking bumps for so long, but he starts getting back into the hang of it like he never missed a beat. And he said the last few days of when he found out that the leukemia was in remission, that he was in remission from the leukemia, it didn't feel real. It was pretty crazy. The whole process of being announced back for Raw and finding out that the leukemia is it's in remission, and now that he can wrestle again, it's just overwhelming feeling of positivity, and he's very happy to share it with the world. So he talks about the actual condition. Apparently it's something called CML. It's chronic. I'm not sure what it stands for. He might have mentioned it here, and I might have missed that. I don't know. But he talks about how it's an early stage of leukemia, so he was really lucky to have found it early. And there was a pill that was made for it, and it was way different when he first got it 10 years ago. The treatments were different, and he was talking about how people say all the time, oh, there's no cure for cancer, and technically there's not, but he talks about how there are different things that you can do to deal with it that people just aren't aware of. They just don't know about. But they are making strides to get rid of the disease. And that kind of applied to him too. He was taking these pills, and it had side effects, and there was some nastiness about it, but it was oral chemotherapy, and he talked about how it was a big win for people, himself included. He's like the poster child for oral chemotherapy now, and that it works, and now the leukemia is in remission as a result. And it's also kept him out of pain too. He really hasn't been in a lot of pain for most of when he was out for those 5 months, aside from a few, some arthritis, as I mentioned earlier, from his feet to his hips. Beyond that, he has been largely good, which is amazing news. So he talks about hanging out with his kids all day. I wasn't sure if he was talking about that day that he heads back to Raw that Monday, or if he just hung out with his kids a lot when he was home from wrestling and in the time that he was on his road to recovery. I'm not exactly sure what he was referring to there. But he arrives at the football stadium in Atlanta where he used to play football ahead of Raw that same night in that same city. And he talks about feeling a lot of emotions and even throws out this quote, which I thought was amazing. He says, "As long as God wakes me up, I feel I can handle the rest," which is such a great fucking quote. And I don't know if that's something that someone else has said before, if that's a Roman Reigns original. I'm not sure, but I thought it was an amazing quote and the biggest takeaway from this special. Anyway, so he talks about how he did not think he'd be back so quick, and he feels super energized. There were times during his road to recovery where he would feel tired out of nowhere, but at this point, he feels like a human should be, like at 100%. So he gets back to Raw, greets superstars backstage, like Sasha Banks, some of the doctors, everyone you can pretty much imagine, Nia Jax, his family. And when he had the leukemia the first time, and I might be misconstruing this here, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but I think it was the leukemia that caused him to pull out of football 10 years ago, because he felt isolated after he got cut from football, I think because of the disease, because he had to deal with the disease, and that's why he was cut from football, because they have a million other people who can play. They don't need him, so they cut him. And at that point, he only had his mom. At this point, he has fans, he has his friends, he has everybody. In addition to his extended family, he only had his mom at that point. He really wasn't living off a ton at that point in his time, at that point in his life. So it's a completely different situation now 10 years later. He talked about the details of his return promo, and he had this big return speech in mind for months. He replayed it over and over and over in his head 1,000 times during his road to recovery, but when it came time to finally deliver that speech ahead of Raw, he just drew a massive blank. And he felt that he couldn't really get the exact details of the promo, like, at that point in time while he's sitting there contemplating what he's going to say before the show, but he knew that it would come to him when it came time to start speaking at the beginning of Raw that night. And he talks about how the moments of overcoming adversity are important. They should be shared, they should be acknowledged, and they should be brought up, because overcoming adversity is a super amazing thing. It doesn't happen a ton, and it should be, appreciated whenever possible. And while he's waiting for Raw to start, he calls some patients from Fort Worth, I think the same kids who had wished him well on his road to recovery when he was first diagnosed with the return of his leukemia back in October. And they were really happy for him. They're congratulating him, and it makes him kind of feel bad. I mean, he feels great that he's able to share this news with these kids. But at the same time, he asks himself, like, why me? Why am I getting cured but not them? It's a great thing for him to feel like that, because he's an awesome just human being. But he wants to ride those positive vibes, and he's happy to reach, if he could just reach one person, then he feels like he's accomplished his goal of what he set out to do here in announcing to the world that his leukemia had returned. And at this point, he doesn't care about getting booed. He doesn't care about getting cheered. He just wants to share with the world his current situation. And all that stuff is kind of, doesn't even really matter anymore to him. And he talks about everything that he's gone through from October up to this current point. It's worth it for the tiniest bit of reassurances that everything's going to be okay, everything will work itself out if you work hard to get better. And it's that reassurance that can be applied to everyone that's dealing with adversity, whether it be cancer or something else, that it can be beaten and it can be overcome. And he talks about how he's not alone this time. And his mom said the same thing. He greets his mom backstage, and he's with his family. He's obviously in great spirits. And he said, I'm thankful that this is the best, thankful is the best word that I can come up with when it comes to how he feels about the fans and his family and his friends. bringing him back with open arms, welcoming him back with open arms to the world of WWE now that he's in remission from the leukemia, and he's super thankful. He said that a million times in his promo, which was amazing. A true feel-good moment on Monday Night Raw, and just in life, just to see the guy overcome adversity, I think is an amazing thing, regardless of what your feelings are towards him as an on-air character. And he hugs his mom and family backstage. I think his sister is there too, and that's what ends this special. I thought it was a great 30-minute Chronicle. I think the Becky Lynch one was a bit shorter at 25 minutes. I think the Paige one was also shorter. This was way better. The Paige one kind of had a sad ending because her career ended, and that was it. They didn't even talk about how she became SmackDown GM after that, so I thought that was weird. But at least this Chronicle has a great Cinderella story ending. I thought it was awesome. So check it out on the network. Roman Reigns, WWE Chronicle. And that does it, guys, for today's edition of Network and Chill. Thank you for checking out the show. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with my full review of WWE Untold, Eddie Guerrero, SmackDown Legend. So stay tuned for that. Until then, guys, have a great rest of your weekend. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.